This is bringing back some good memories. I'm in the year 10 age group here, thinking about my favourite job as a teenager. Had some pretty ordinary jobs in the first years of my teens, working at a chicken butcher as a dish pig. I worked at Pizza Hut for a shift, and then I found out I was getting paid $5.20 an hour, so I didn't go back again. A couple other odd jobs, a little bit of construction, labouring here and there, but nothing that really made me happy to go to work until I got a job as a lifeguard at the best pool in Canberra, and somehow managed to wiggle my way in there with a few of my best mates. So we were about 14, 15 at the time, and we had to get our first aid and bronze medallion. Both really awesome certificates to have under your belt, even if you don't plan on ever rescuing anyone. A lot of us eventually becoming parents one day should be able to have a few tricks up the sleeve if your kids are ever in danger or injured. So bronze medallion, learning about how to look after people in a water environment and do rescues, and first aid, we all know what that is. So we ticked those off the list, and then we went into the pool on the weekend. Our shift was supposed to start around lunchtime, and we got in early, trained for water polo, and spent a bunch of time jumping off the diving boards as we always did in summer. We were kind of thinking it was going to be a fun cruisy job. Didn't really know what to expect. We'd kind of seen what the lifeguards had been up to over the years of attending this pool, and we thought, yeah, looks like a pretty cruisy gig. Let's get amongst it. Little did we know, before even starting our first shift, my best mate Harry and I were going to be chucked in the deep end and have to do a rescue. So we're fresh off the first aid and bronze medallion, so we have a little bit of an idea how to rescue people, but we didn't think we'd have to use it our whole time working at this job, let alone before our first shift had even started. And so someone jumped off the 10-meter platform. They landed a little bit lean back, and it was a semi back slap. It really didn't look that bad. I've seen people land on their face, like my brother. He did his first double gainer off the 10 and landed clean on his belly and face, got absolutely rocked, and ran back to the top. Everyone in the line going up to the 10-meter moved out of the way, and there was like over 50 people in the line. Everyone moved out the way, let him go straight back up to the top, and the whole pool was like cheering and chanting. It was chockers. And then he went for it straight again and stuck it. And so I'd seen people land as bad as you possibly can, shake it off, and go do tricks again. So then to see this girl land a bit awkwardly and then come up from the water and claim that she has a broken back, my mate and I are just looking at one another like, yeah, right, okay, well, what do you want us to do, boss? And we're kind of like looking over at the lifeguard in charge, and she was quite a big girl, lovely woman, but she clearly didn't want to get in the pool. And she looked over at us, didn't even need to say anything. Like, we could just tell that she wasn't getting in the pool. And she kind of looked at us, and me and my mate are like, all right, let's bloody get into it. And so we swam over, and the girl had started making her way over to the edge of the pool, and we kind of laid her flat on her back in the water, tried to keep her spine as neutral and stable as possible, and got her over to the edge of the pool. And then for the next 20 to 30 minutes, we took turns at doing egg beater, which is where you're using your legs in a circular motion to keep your head above water. It's really common in water polo. And so if your hands are up above water and you're trying to block the ball, you've got to spin your legs around in an anti-clockwise and clockwise manner to keep you above water. And so that's what we were doing. We're doing the egg beater and taking turns of stabilizing her spine for a few minutes at a time. And then when we'd gas out, the other one would tap in, and we repeated that for 20, 30 minutes, whatever it was. And everyone around the pool is like, what is going on here? This is pretty hectic. The ambulance ends up coming in. They get the stretcher, put her on the stretcher, and they kind of take over. And then before you know it, things are back to normal. And we had another half hour or so of jumping around on the diving boards, and then our first shift started. So we were like, is this what our summer's going to look like? Just rescuing people all the time? Because we didn't sign up for this shit. Like, sure, it was exciting and it was really cool to test ourselves, but 14, 15-year-olds, however old we were, year 9 or 10, probably not ideal to go from not being a lifeguard at all, not really having much of an understanding how to rescue people to all of a sudden we are the gatekeepers looking after the busiest pool in Canberra, and you've got people coming in that are drinking alcohol. You've got people that just love breaking the rules, and often little things that we were supposed to pull people up on, like not doing more than 2 jumps on the diving board, or not jumping off more than 2 people at a time off the platforms, we would turn a blind eye to. We're like, oh, that's a shit rule, we'll let that one slide. So we were definitely pretty lenient with a lot of the rules, but there were also times where we had to crack the whip. And you've got young 14, 15-year-old Benny going up to people twice my age. They're drunk as, and they're punching on with people, and I'm supposed to be the one that breaks it up and calls the police. So you get thrown in the deep end and have to deal with these things every now and then that you really weren't equipped to deal with. But it was trial by fire, and we learnt so much in that job. Not only the physical side of things, like doing flips and rescuing people and setting up the pool and packing up and serving in the counter, but the interpersonal skills and being able to deal with people and just have a chat. That's why I reckon jobs like that as a teenager are awesome, where you're in a position where you're forced to talk to people that you wouldn't usually deal with, and you have to problem solve on the go. You have to be confident, you have to be assertive. So being a lifeguard back then was an awesome job. We'd finish school, jump on our scooters, catch the bus into the city, and then we'd bloody boost down, get to work for a bit, train for water polo, jump off the diving boards, and then head home and kind of repeat that 2 or 3 of the weeknights per week. And then we'd spend a lot of our weekends at the pool in summer. So before you knew it, there was myself and a few of my mates that was some of the main lifeguards there. Got a bunch of 15-year-olds looking after the canteen, looking after the reception. We'd let all our friends in for free, hook them up with free food and free drinks, and just take care of everyone that we knew. And then also, once we realized that we had a little bit more freedom with the role than what we initially anticipated, I guess you could say we started stretching things further and further and having a little bit more fun with it. In hindsight, we weren't doing anything too crazy or too illegal or anything like that. But some days there wasn't much action happening. So you would do whatever you could to make the day go by. And whether that's chatting with people or whether that's setting up the big inflatable obstacle course and getting the fire hose out and drilling people in the face just to keep yourself entertained for the shift. And so usually when people are going over this obstacle course in the water, a few meters high, and there were a bunch of different obstacles you had to kind of get through, we were supposed to have the fire hose on like a low to mid setting. Any more than that and it would really sting. But we would get all our friends and stuff lining up. We'd have it cranked on the highest setting, and people would be going, and we're like headshotting people, and they're just getting knocked off this obstacle course. Sometimes people's board shorts were getting ripped off. Some of my mates were renowned for being pretty good at shooting the odd bikini off some of the older cuties, if you know what I'm saying. And 15-year-olds, young, dumb, full of cum, just idiots. But we tried to be pretty friendly with it. If there was young kids that didn't want a bar of it and they just wanted to go through the obstacle course and you could tell they were timid, fragile little kids, we would let them go through. But if there was big footy players that thought they were up for the challenge, we would make their life a living hell trying to get to the end of the obstacle course. So usually you could get on and make it relatively easily if you take your time, and you're supposed to go one at a time and space it out and keep it nice and safe. But we would just let everyone go, and it's like run the gauntlet, and you'd have people running in from the side of the pool, launching and doing big Sparta kicks into the side of the obstacle course to shake people off. And you'd have people wrestling on there and spear tackling one another off. Like, it was the best playground ever. Have so much fun. And that job was something that, in hindsight, was, just reflecting on that job now for the first time in years. In hindsight, that job was not only good to put a bit of money in our pockets and build the interpersonal skills and have fun, but it also helped us build a bit of an awareness and skill set around doing flips and whatnot. So that's something that I've always loved doing. We used to always go to the trampoline parks, go into gymnastic centres, and then being able to practice them off the 1 metre, 3 metre, 5 metre and 10 metre diving board in a safe environment was the dream. We'd go in, sometimes we'd have wetsuits on, and when we're peer pressuring each other to try new tricks, you know, it was safe and you had all the facilities you needed. These days, they've closed the 10 metre down because it's not safe enough. But back then, it was the perfect playground. And that period of my life, as I said, we'd ride scooters a bit, and we got bullied quite a bit for riding our scooters because most other kids would have bikes or they wouldn't have any sort of vehicle at all. And our crew would cruise around on scooters because they were so good at taking on the bus. You could go from class to class, and they were just fun and light and easy and affordable. And so, yeah, we got bullied for being the scooter gang. Fair enough. Everyone gets bullied at one stage or another, but it definitely was a bit of a hard pill to swallow at times because you had all these older footy boys just ripping into us non-stop about it. We'd be like scootering to class and you'd have the older boys just screaming out, "Scooter gang!" and "You fucking pussies," and just all this sort of stuff. And we kind of just took it on the chin. But then when the time came for summer to come around, you'd have all these older bullies coming to the pool, and none of them could really do anything off the diving boards. A lot of them just loved jumping in or doing like a big dive or something like that. And so I remember this one crew in particular that we ended up becoming good friends with, but at the time didn't know them that well, and they were kind of the older guys. They would go one after another and do their nice little dive, and then we'd go, and our crew would go after them and do like double flips and triple flips and just like look over and be like, "Yeah, who's the scooter gang now?" And then we started calling them the dive gang. So we felt like because we invested time and energy into learning something, a skill that we were proud of, it kind of helped us come out of that stage where we got heavily bullied, for one thing. And so, I don't know, even though the whole scooter thing was a little bit lame, we still had so much fun with it. And I think if you can pick up a skill or a hobby that you're genuinely curious and passionate about, regardless of whether it's cool or not, I think writing that out and just embracing it, because there's always going to be people that pay you out for one thing or another. And if you're having fun, that's the main thing. Another thing that this has just brought up, back in the day when I was like, 10 or 12, early high school years, that's when I first started posting stuff on YouTube, and I'd post like scooter highlight videos. Thought I was the man, but really in hindsight now, the stuff we were doing back then, you'd have bloody 3-year-olds doing it now. Like, it's just progressed so far. But back then there wasn't many people pushing it in Canberra on scooters. Like, we weren't doing flips or anything, but we were having a bit of a dig. And we'd post these videos that we were proud of, and they'd get barely any traction. But I remember one comment in particular was just feeding us and paying us out, and like, "You guys are fucking losers," and all this sort of stuff. And I kind of was like, "Oh yeah, who cares?" But that was the last video I made and posted to YouTube for like probably over 10 years. So it clearly did have an effect on me. It's interesting how you can get so much positive feedback on something from your friends and family and randoms, but then the comment from one person stings the most, and it just takes you away from doing what you enjoy doing. Sometimes I wonder if I'd stuck with YouTube back then and just plugged away at it the whole way through, how I would be going with it now. And I wouldn't change anything, but it's something that I do wish I'd learned earlier on, to do stuff that you love doing, regardless of how it makes your social status seem to others. So yeah, the whole scooter and pool scene was definitely something that we were heavily invested in those years. And it was so nice being able to go into work. It didn't feel like work. Not only could you meet girls and make new friends and hook your friends up with food and free entry, we developed a little bit of a work ethic, even though it seems like we probably didn't. And not only did we get a bit of a work ethic, we kind of realized that, hold on a second, work doesn't have to necessarily be a chore. You can do stuff and have fun at the same time. And what I really liked about it is when I was working, sometimes I wouldn't have any friends there. I wouldn't know anybody. And I'm standing there on the side of the pool, and you got this little kid that I've never met before, and he's clearly wanting to try a trick that he's never done before. And I would like just bring these random kids in and just like I guess coach them or mentor them or peer pressure them, whatever needed to be done. And if they wanted help, I was usually willing to give it to them. Yeah, that kind of theme has carried on throughout. Like I love testing people and making people believe in themselves a bit more. Partly because sometimes I really struggle to believe in myself. So if I can instill a bit of faith in other people, somehow it works its way around and I build more confidence within myself. That job working at Civic Pool, absolute blast. One other quick story that comes to mind was a friend of mine, not naming names. He'd always come in for free and we'd look after him. And one day he got kicked out of the pool for something by one of the big managers, and it was above my head. I couldn't do anything about it. And the big manager was into him, like absolutely staunching him and ripping him a new asshole. And on his way out, he like let out a bit of aggression. And I think he like palmed or just did like a little punch on the main glass sliding door. The whole thing shattered. And then the big manager saw it happen and they got in a foot chase for a good K or two up through the city. And apparently it was like neck and neck. You've got this massive, jacked footy player in his late 20s chasing this jacked little pocket rocket that's 16 years old through the city. Oh, it would have been so classic to see. And he ended up outrunning him and getting away. And from then on, he was nervous to come back to the pool. But once the older guy moved on, then he started to come back and we sort of picked up where we left off. But yeah, definitely at that age, we probably could have been better employees. But I think considering we're getting paid, fairly minimum wage, and they had a bunch of young 15-year-olds looking after a pool, they got what they paid for, that's for sure. So yeah, I guess if there's something that I'd like you to take away from this, it might be that if you are struggling with interpersonal skills, you're struggling with communication and job satisfaction, maybe taking a little bit of a pay cut for 3 to 6 months, doing something that you genuinely like, something where you're forced to talk to people, get out of your comfort zone, and yeah, have a bit of fun in the process. So it's so easy getting caught up just going from the best paying job to the next. But is your happiness really worth it if you're spending 60% of your week doing something that you dislike just for an extra 10 or 20% of pay? We'd go into work, do our 6-hour shift, have an absolute ball, get a bit of pocket money. And, half the time when we weren't working, we'd spend our days there as well. So have a think about it. Is there something out there that you wouldn't mind getting up at the crack of dawn for? Something that you wouldn't press snooze for? Yeah, free of judgment. What is something that lights you up that you would love to do as a career? There's so many awesome TAFE courses out there these days. There's a company called 5 Star Training that runs a lot of outdoor recreation training certifications. So you can get government subsidized training and learn how to be a hiking guide, a canoe guide, a surfing guide, all of these things for next to no money. And it can put you in the contention to get a job within months. Like, it's so easy to get those jobs that you think that are really far-fetched. All it takes, going on Google, talking to people, and just having a crack. What have you got to lose? Righto, that's enough out of me. Till the next one.